Are we live? I think we're live. I've got Miss Dolly Lynn with me. We are out running some errands. I'm waiting on my laundry to dry. And then, let's just do this actually. Because it is loud out there, but Miss Dolly needs her windows down or else we're going to be hearing her bark. So let's roll up the windows here, close the sunroof so there's not so much noise, because I still have some time before my laundry's dry. So today I have quite a bit on the agenda. I got out earlier today than normal on Sunday so that I could run some errands. As you guys know, I am recently unemployed, but I have a very cool opportunity potentially. My sister works for a rehab and they asked me to come speak, which I do often. It's a drug and alcohol rehab. And they asked me to come speak, and now they are wanting me to be like a therapist at this drug and alcohol rehab, and it's the perfect job for me. I'm super excited about it, so everybody keep your fingers crossed. This would be perfect for me. Yeah, this is just like the dream job for me. So I'm super excited. Keep your fingers crossed. I'm going to be having a Skype call with the operator of the rehab tomorrow. So I'm super, 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 super excited. The rehab isn't in my actual hometown, but it's in East Tennessee. So I'm just really excited. It's just a really good opportunity for me. And also I think that this would do a lot for my recovery, to help others in their recovery. You guys know that for me, something that really helps me stay sober is helping other people get sober and stay sober. So I'm very excited. I am going to be doing a speech. That's already happening. So, and I do that a lot, sharing my story and my testimony on my sobriety and things like that. So I'm just excited to get to know these people and help them and let them know that there is light at the end of the tunnel and it is possible to get sober and stay sober. So fingers crossed for me on that. I am very excited. You know, I always do say that when one door closes, another one opens, and I stand by that. I truly, truly, truly do believe that, and with all of my heart and soul I do. And I think that this was God's plan for me, and I'm very excited for this next step. And I really do think that working at this rehab is what is next on my journey. But today there is quite a bit on the to-do list. I have already went and walked 2 miles with Dolly. Well, let's be fair and say 1.5 miles, because we kind of took a little detour. So we'll say we walked 1.5 miles. I've already washed clothes. They're in the dryer now. I'm waiting on those. After I get the clothes out of the dryer here at the laundromat, I'm then going to take Dolly home and go to the grocery store and grab some things. I'm going to do a cook with me on my Facebook. So if you guys follow me on Facebook, it's just Morgan Shea. You will have to send me a friend request, but I always accept your guys' friends request. I can always tell your all's usernames. Thank you, Brianna. Yes, fingers crossed. Hi, Morgan. So happy to hear this. I've been praying for you so much. Hope you're doing well. I'm doing great, Crystal. Thank you so much. So we're going to do it. We have on the schedule today a cook with me. I also am halfway done with the TikTok transition. You guys have really been loving the denture transitions. So this one isn't a denture transition. I have my dentures in at the beginning of it, and I will at the end. So, but I did post a denture transition yesterday. So if you haven't seen it on my TikTok, I'm at the Morgan Shea on TikTok. And so I have that scheduled today. I also am going to be filming at least one YouTube video, but I have hopes to do 2. I've really found myself attached to the Pike County Massacre. I talked about it last night. I filmed my podcast on Facebook last night. So if you follow me on Facebook, you probably already seen my podcast I did last night. But I'm thinking I'm going to redo the podcast on YouTube tonight. So we probably will be doing a live later tonight on YouTube where I'm talking about it. It is where it's literally over custody of a child. This man and his family, his mother and father, which his mother did plead guilty. He pled guilty, but the dad and the brother are not pleading guilty. So they are standing trial. And right now, George Wagner the Fourth, whatever, he's a piece of shit. He is saying that he did not partake in the crime, so he is standing trial right now. But essentially, they went and shot in their sleep 8 of the Roden family. Literally. So insane. And I have a lot of thoughts on it, so yeah, I'm planning on redoing that podcast tonight on YouTube. So if you guys want to tune in at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tonight, we'll be talking about that. There's also another YouTube. I want to do a story time video tonight. And then also I have another video in mind. So we'll see. I've got an idea, and we'll just see. Sometimes when I record these videos that I have ideas of, sometimes they make them to my channel, sometimes they don't, but I'm really invested in this idea, so we'll see. I don't really want to share it yet because I kind of want to save it. And then you guys have really been asking for Morgan Halloween content, so tonight I am telling a story time from a Halloween party that was absolutely insane. The fact that even happened, and I'm still here to tell it, and the other people involved are here to tell it, is insane. It was one of the scariest nights of my entire life. I will never forget it. It literally gave me PTSD of Halloween, and is the main reason that I cannot watch any scary movie. I can't, because I lived one, and it was insane. So another thing I wanted to talk about is this Jeffrey Dahmer series on Netflix. So many people are wanting my thoughts on the documentary and wanting me to do a beauty and documentary breakdown. For those of you guys who do not know what beauty and documentary breakdown is, in the beginning of my YouTube channel, I used to do those every single Thursday, and basically I would do my makeup and we would discuss a documentary in full, in its entirety. A lot of them have to do with true crime, different things like that, and so a lot of you guys have wanted me to break down this documentary. The reason that I'm not going to is because this is one of those documentaries that is based on, so a lot of the things that are said in this documentary are not actual true to the crime, to the what actually happened. For example, the man who escaped Jeffrey Dahmer and is the person who got Jeffrey Dahmer caught, he was not gay. He did not claim to be gay. He went to Jeffrey Dahmer's apartment under the and you can watch his testimony on YouTube, and I really, really recommend that you do, because you can get an actual better sense of who this person was. He was led to Jeffrey Dahmer's apartment under the pretense of making $100 to do photos. And the news and everyone painted him out to be a homosexual black man. And that is not the case. And also in this documentary, they do really use the narrative that Jeffrey Dahmer tried to paint, that he only went for, he only went for black men, Asian men, because they were beautiful, not because they didn't have any type of relationship with their family. Listen, Jeffrey Dahmer was very calculated in the people that he chose to murder. He chose people who were hitchhikers, who, when Jeffrey Dahmer got his apartment, it was in the worst part of Milwaukee. It was the worst part of town, and he would go to gay bars and he would analyze his victims. I have studied the Jeffrey Dahmer case throughout just as much as I did the Jodi Arias case. These two cases I know the ins and outs of. And Jeffrey Dahmer really studied his victims. He wanted to make sure that they didn't really have a relationship with their family. He wanted to make sure that there wasn't going to be anyone who was going to look for them. And he was very, very much aware that a lot of the police who were working at the time were very much racist. And my God, that 14-year-old boy who was naked and brain dead, the boy had already had acid drilled into his head. And the police believed Jeffrey Dahmer that he was his 19-year-old lover. The boy was 14 and had already had acid drilled into his skull. And they let that boy go back with Jeffrey Dahmer, and Jeffrey Dahmer murdered that boy moments after he re-entered Jeffrey Dahmer's apartment. Do not let this Netflix series fool you. Jeffrey Dahmer knew exactly what he was doing. He was very calculated, and he was very dangerous. And I think that a lot of times when these different streaming services do these documentaries, they try to make them more entertaining. So what I will do is I will break down the Jeffrey Dahmer case. What I will not do is break down Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story. I will not break that down because it doesn't paint the true picture of how racist and disgusting he was. Because it is very, very important that you guys know that Jeffrey Dahmer was very calculated on his decision-making process. He only, for the better part, out of his 17 victims, 10 of them were minorities. Do not for a second let it fool you that this man was not racist and calculated in how he chose his victims. He was very much so that. So when you guys message me and ask, will you do a beauty and documentary breakdown on the new Jeffrey Dahmer Netflix series? No. I will, however, break down Jeffrey Dahmer, who he was, the monster he was, and how calculated he was on choosing his victims. He was very much the person. There is 2 interviews that you can find of Jeffrey Dahmer. Both of them were filmed in the 90s. Jeffrey Dahmer was only in prison for a short period of time before he was beaten to death. So you can watch those documentaries and those interviews, and in both he very much says, oh, I picked these people because I thought they were beautiful, blah, blah, blah. He tries to paint this, oh, I thought they were so beautiful that I brutally murdered them. In what world, sir, does that make sense? No. You would go to these gay bars, you would watch these people from afar, you would listen to their conversations, and then once they felt comfortable enough to talk to you and speak to you, you would then bring them into your home where you would drug them to where, with sleeping medication, to where they were now in this, half awake state. Then you would drill acid into their head to try to make them in this zombie-like state. And when that didn't work for you, at that point you would then, and this is a trigger warning obviously for sexual assault, murder, etc. So if any of that's triggering to you, this is not the lab for you. But he would then sexually assault them, dismember their body, and he ate numerous body parts of his victims, where he claims in interviews and testimony that the reason that he did so was so that he could feel closer to his victims. And a lot of people have wondered, why did some of these people go so long without missing? How did this man get by for so long without being caught? Well, look into the case, you guys. His first victim, who he claims to have been an accident, was a hitchhiker who was walking to a concert, and Jeffrey Dahmer seen him, passed him, picked him up. Jeffrey Dahmer was still in high school at the time, brought the boy back to his house where he strangled him with a dumbbell and sexually assaulted him, dismembered his body. He kept that boy's head in a chest for years until it was in a mummified state. He chose people who were going through a very vulnerable time in their life. You also have to remember that these crimes took place in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. You also have to remember that between the first murder and the next spree of crimes was a 9-year gap. So when Jeffrey Dahmer murdered his first victim, there was 9 years until he would murder the next. But when he murdered the next, it was a spree. And that is what would get Jeffrey Dahmer caught. But it was still over a few year span that Jeffrey Dahmer murdered and before he would actually get caught. And just, you know, before you watch these documentaries, you know, especially if you are a true crime junkie like myself, educate yourself on the actual crime. Most of these testimonies, most of these cases you can find on YouTube. You can actually watch the actual trial. I have watched so many different testimonies. They are all on YouTube of this murder, of this trial. And you will see that this man was much more calculated. And I think that people romanticizing Jeffrey Dahmer and talking about how handsome he was and things like that is disrespect to the victims and the victims' families. And not only that, but Jeffrey Dahmer's parents and his family. You know, I could not imagine raising my child and then my child growing up to be this monster. I could not imagine what that would do to me, and it almost ruined his father. His father went into an absolute mental breakdown, blaming it completely on himself. He also wrote a book, and I believe it's called The Father's Story or something like that. You can get it on Amazon. It's absolutely an amazing read. It's from the perspective of a parent of someone who is a serial killer. And, you know, if you are into true crime and you are into the psyche of what it is that switches a person into being so heinous, you will absolutely enjoy the book. And that's something that I enjoy more than anything, is actually trying to understand what can make someone do something so unthinkable. Because to the everyday person like yourself and me, we do not think of these things. These things are not something that crosses our mind. And it's hard for us to come to terms with someone being so disturbed mentally that they take another person's life. And when you have a serial killer on your... when you're talking about a serial killer, this is someone who a lot of times it is a fantasy. And that was the case in Jeffrey Dahmer's situation. He sexually fantasized about having total control over a person, and also being able, he also has been very open that most of the time he could not get sexually aroused unless the victim was deceased. What makes a person have those thoughts and feelings? That is what interests me. It's the psyche of it all. What mentally switches in someone's brain to feel like, because to me, that is the most disrespectful, disgusting thing I've ever heard of. But to another person that is not mentally stable, what triggers that? And there was actually the very last interview with Jeffrey Dahmer, there were a bunch of different psychiatrists who spoke on it. And one of the women, she's very intelligent. She spoke on a lot of different serial murder cases. She spoke to a lot of serial killers. And she said that it is not just like a switch, it's a trigger. There's something that triggers that person from, she said it could be a color, it could be a food, it could be a place, so many different things that can trigger that person back into that headspace. And they become obsessed with the thought, and it cannot leave their brain. And it's, just watch it. Just watch the original interviews with Jeffrey Dahmer and thank me later, because it is very, 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 it is disturbing. So if it isn't something that you're interested in, I might not suggest it. But if you're into true crime and you really do want to get a bigger picture of what actually happened with these interviews that happened during the time when all these things happened, And you're also talking about a very small part of a town where nothing like this ever happened. So when it happened, and you're also talking about a time when I think 3 of the biggest serial killers of all time were all taking place at the same time. You have Richard Ramirez and, you know, Jeffrey Dahmer and, you know, Charles Manson. All these things happened right around the same time. So, you know, it was just sweeping the nation. You know, you have the Night Stalker happen on the West Coast. You know, it's just very interesting. So I definitely recommend that. All you have to do is go to YouTube and look up original Jeffrey Dahmer interviews, and you will see, I think one was a 60 Minutes interview, and I can't remember where the other one was through, but very, very interesting nonetheless. So yes, I will for sure do a beauty and documentary breakdown, but on the case, on the actual murders, not the documentary, because like I said, the documentary, which this happens a lot. It's not the streaming service's fault. They do put in the beginning, you know, based on true events, blah, blah, blah. But they do change certain things for entertainment purposes, for, you know, shock value, different things like that. Just like with, if you've seen the series, which this is a spoiler, so if you've not watched the series and you don't want a spoiler, go ahead and click out. But there is a part where they show the box that Jeffrey Dahmer kept the hitchhiker's head in. And it was a mummified head, but he also had the testicles of that hitchhiker as well inside of that box. And in the series, they make it look like Jeffrey Dahmer, you know, Jeffrey Dahmer's dad wanted the box back. The box had all of his childhood photos in it. His dad wanted the box back, and Jeffrey acted like he couldn't find the key. His dad goes and runs down to the kitchen to get like a hammer or something. Jeffrey opens up the box, takes the head and testicles out, and puts in pornographic magazines. And then his dad comes back up to the room and he says, no, don't smash the box. Here's the key. And his dad opens it to see the magazines. What actually happened was Jeffrey really didn't know. The key was he never got the key. His dad took it down to the cellar. They got into a big fight. His dad was going to bust the box open. Jeffrey ends up coming back inside the house, and they make up. And his dad just never opened the box. See, there's little things like that where they will change the story and what actually happened for shock value, just like turning in the actual victim who escaped Jeffrey Dahmer and is the person who actually got Jeffrey Dahmer caught, making it out to be that he was homosexual, which a lot of news places did that as well. But if you watch the actual testimony of that man, he is not homosexual, he is not gay, he was at a bar in a mall. It wasn't even the same bar that Jeffrey Dahmer got most of his victims, which is another thing that they made out in the Netflix documentary. They made it out to be like he met that guy at that gay bar. That's not where he met him. And also changed a lot of the things that happened that made it to where that man was able to escape. They painted it out like he done like this sexy dance. That was not true. They just did several things to change it up. And then they do include some truth, like The Exorcist 3, that Jeffrey Dahmer would play for victims before he murdered them. That's true. Where Jeffrey Dahmer laid on his chest and said he was listening to his heartbeat and he was about to eat his heart. That's true. So they do leave in some truths, but they add in some extra sprinkle to give you a little bit of shock value and for entertainment purposes, which you can't blame them. They're a streaming service. They want people to watch their show. It is what it is. But if you are a true crime junkie like myself, I want to know what happened. Tell me exactly what happened. I need the truth of the matter. I don't need none of the extra bullshit. I want to know exactly what happened. So anyways, there's that. But yeah, I'm about to go in and get my laundry, go take Miss Dolly Loohoo home so I can go to the grocery store and then go home because it is content day and I have a shit ton to do. so much. So I think I'm going to do a get ready with me live on TikTok. It'll probably be around 3:30, 4 o'clock before I get to that point. So if you want to watch that live get ready with me, be sure you're following me on TikTok at The Morgan Shay. I love you guys. I hope you guys are having a fantastic Sunday. And until the next time, bye.